let's talk about the F word.
Oh my gosh, the F word? Is it a four-letter word?
It's time to talk about it.
Okay, well, go ahead and say it if you must.
Forgiveness.
Yes, forgiveness.
Yes. So the F word,
The F word,
forgiveness.
forgiveness. Yes.
Let's get into it.
Alrighty.
Well, I think that words can mean different things to different people. And yes, we have a dictionary and there's definitions of words, but a lot of it's contextual of, how you grew up, your culture, whatever it may be. So, what does forgiveness mean to you, Mom? Kind of being, you're 60, you've lived a lot of life, and think let's talk about your definition of it.
Well, forgiveness reminds me of another F word, and it actually is a four-letter word. So, excuse me, and it means free. To be free. And then you might even take a step further and say, free from what, right? But you free yourself from pain. You free yourself from all those negative thoughts and all of reliving the past.
Yeah.
It's for like freedom from the past, I think. And so for me, that's what forgiveness means. And it is the key foundation to moving forward in life, right? What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's because I'm your daughter and you taught me everything, but that's what,
Not
I agree
everything.
that that's what forgiveness means. I think that forgiveness also, importantly, it means grace.
Yes.
That's one word. If yours is free, and if I had to choose one word, that is the word I would choose, is grace.
So
And
tell me, what do you mean? Like grace, like what? Like, what do you mean? How does that tie into forgiveness?
Yeah. Well, grace, I mean, I honestly, they kind of go hand in hand. They're not synonymous necessarily, but in order to forgive you, you have to have grace. You have to have grace for yourself and grace for others.
Right.
And
very much.
Yeah.
So when you say like grace, you're giving that person a chance, right? Because we as humans, we make mistakes. And who are we to like what did they say? When you point one finger at someone, you have three more pointing back at yourself, right? So it's always like, take a moment to look at yourself, right? And we talked about, you and I have talked about forgiveness in the past, and really forgiveness starts with yourself.
Definitely. I think that there is a structure, kind of the bliss theory behind forgiveness is forgive yourself, then you can ask for forgiveness. Then you can forgive others.
Right. Right. Because when you forgive, if you don't forgive yourself, it's going to be really hard to forgive someone else.
Right. I mean, I think like that was like I was never a person that it was easy for me to forgive. I really struggled with that, and it's honestly because I had such a hard time forgiving myself. Like, I would be the person that was up at night thinking about that one mistake that I made at work, or like I said something weird in a conversation that like maybe someone reacted weird to, and then I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe I said that. Or I was like on a date and I'm like, oh my god, like why did I say that weird thing? Or something like that, and then you like spin out.
Right.
And it takes up so much mental space, that like obsession with perfectionism.
Yeah.
And I think like even with like being a woman, like the expectations that society has on us is a very high,
to like be perfect.
To be perfect, to be like the perfect mom, the perfect wife, the perfect, person who's contributed to society through their work, the perfect everything, and please everyone, and somehow also take time to exercise and be fulfilled and be healed and woke and whatever else, right? Like there's so much pressure on being a woman, but I just had such a hard time, and I was so hard on myself, and therefore it was really challenging for me to forgive others, because I had such a high expectation of myself, that I had that crazy high expectation of everyone else, even though I never met that expectation. Or maybe I occasionally would, but no one's ever perfect. No one's consistently always going to be perfect. It's impossible to be perfect. And so, but I still yet held myself and others to that standard. And so because I wasn't able to really forgive myself easily, when someone did something, I was like, I wrote it off. Like, no, that's unforgivable. I'm never gonna
Oh,
let that go.
okay.
I'm always gonna think about it because that's what I would always do to myself.
Yes, I see that now. I see, I thanks for that explanation, because I remember there were times in your life where you told me that you didn't easily forgive.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tried to find different avenues to help you get through that
Hmm.
and talk to you about it. But I remember when the show was getting ready to drop
Mm-hmm.
and you called us. We
Mm-hmm.
were all on a conference call
Mm-hmm.
with your siblings and I, and you said, Mom, Zach gave me the best gift. We
Mm-hmm.
were like, what is it? We were
Mm-hmm.
all excited. And you said, the gift of forgiveness. And I'll never forget
Mm-hmm.
that day, because we all literally clapped and yayed and cried with you on the phone, all of us. So
Oh, was I
it was,
crying?
I don't remember, but you were really happy, and we I guess we didn't expect you to say that, that it was the gift of forgiveness, and
Yeah.
it was such a powerful thing. It was probably one of the best gifts that he gave you, right?
Yeah. It's true. And it's funny because I don't even really remember that conversation,
Yeah.
but
It was the night the show dropped.
he, I really, I got so much out of Love is Blind and the experience. Um, and not only like my husband, but friendships and all of these things. But that was probably one of the best things besides Zach that I got out of it. Like he I really just admire so much how forgiving he is. Like I admire that he truly lives his life with grace. And he was telling me about, his life and the things that he's been through. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but like how he was so forgiving for these key people in his life that shaped him, and not always maybe in the best way, right?
Hmm.
But to be genuinely, truly forgiving and to have forgiven, it was so inspiring to me and so beautiful. And even if I had like walked away, well, we did walk away. Like he
Yeah.
broke up with me. But
Hmm.
when I walked away from him, I still had that gift. Like he had
Yes.
wrapped up this gift for
Oh
me.
my
And I
gosh.
hadn't like unwrapped it yet and like really dug deep into it, but the gift was there. And like the foundation was laid. And it's so funny because like it comes so full circle, because like
Hmm.
that gift that he gave me,
Right.
I was then able to use it in our relationship.
Yes. Oh my
And
gosh. What
it's
a
just such
beautiful
a
thing.
freeing thing. Like it truly like changed my perspective on everything.
Right.
I have freed up all of this mental space that used to be preoccupied with my lack of forgiveness of myself, of others. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's not easy, and it wasn't like a light switch turned on. It's a process.
Hmm. Definitely.
And that's why we talk about like forgiving the self is like the first step,
Oh, definitely.
and forgiving yourself.
Well, no, when you get to that point in your life where you go through all of the things that you need to forgive yourself for, sometimes you realize that there's such little things. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you get hung up on that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like flying a kite. Right? Like your
Mm.
kite is flying high and you're like
Mm-hmm.
going good,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're like, it's stuck, like that string is stuck,
Mm-hmm.
and you want your kite to go higher, but you're like, what's keeping me stuck?
Mm-hmm.
And it could be just like a small thing to forgive.
Yeah.
And when you practice forgiveness of yourself, I mean, and I've applied this to myself. That's why I feel like I can speak to it,
Mm-hmm.
because, like you with Zach,
Mm-hmm.
you've applied it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can speak to it. And it's your authentic self saying that this is something that I can forgive.
Yeah.
And then when you do, you realize you have that freedom of from pain, the
Yes.
freedom of dis-ease,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go into that ease of
Mm-hmm.
life,
Yeah.
right? And then you realize, there goes your kite, it can fly even higher, right?
Yeah.
We're never finished, right?
We're never
We're
finished.
never
It's always a
finished.
journey. And I totally agree with you. I think that it's so powerful to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, this is what I need to forgive myself for, because that can be kind of scary. Things can bubble up that you don't want to think about. that you wish you could forget.
Right.
But in order to, and maybe you will never forget it, but in order to have that release, which is what maybe the forgetting is giving you,
Mm-hmm.
the wishing to forget is the release.
Right.
Forgiveness will give you that release.
Yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And then you let go, right? I remember there was a time in my life where, I read that when you don't forgive, your heart is bound, and I thought, gosh, I can't go through life with my heart bound. It just sounds really scary, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But life is about loving, right? And making new friends and meeting new people and just enjoying life.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows you a space to enjoy life, I think,
Yeah.
even more.
Yeah.
Even like I said, recently I was going through, I was doing an abundance challenge.
That sounds fun. Maybe
And
Bliss Theory needs to
I
do a
know
little abundance
we're going to do some
challenge.
abundance challenges,
Yeah,
of
maybe on
course.
Patreon, just so follow us there, because
Oh,
like we'll put up a bunch of stuff about abundance challenge
yes.
maybe
And
soon.
it's just beautiful. It's
Yeah.
just beautiful. And I realized I had to write a letter to someone that hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, who hurt me? And then I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, it was something about with my father.
Mm.
And I wrote that letter, and it was a letter of thank you,
Mm.
like gratitude. Thank you for showing me what conditional love looks like, because I
Mm-hmm.
grew up thinking I needed to show my children unconditional love and myself,
Right.
right?
You were like purposeful about
I
it.
was very purposeful about it.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote that letter. I was it actually makes you think, because you're using something that was negative and sort of even turning it into a positive.
Mm-hmm.
Because with every mistake, every time we trip and we fall, every time we make those mistakes, there's a learning. It's a gift, right? And so I think that's important too. Every problem has a solution, and the solution many times is forgiveness.
Yeah, I love that.
Just something to think about.
No, it's so important. And I think it's really key to like acknowledge and talk about like in detail like why forgiving yourself is the start of how you really forgive others. I can hear people saying like I don't need to forgive myself to forgive others. Like
Right.
I don't need to do that.
Right.
Well, on the contrary, like you do.
You do. You do.
Um
Well, you can tell those that don't, and it's okay, right? You can tell when others don't know forgiveness of self, because they're no way going to forgive you.
mhm.
You say, will you forgive me? You say that you're sorry, and they will not accept it. And then you're like, wait a minute, it's not about me. You don't take things personally,
Mhm. Mhm.
because they can't forgive themselves. Why would they forgive me?
Right. Right. And I think it can't that's the whole thing is like if you did something that you want to be forgiven for and you ask the person if they forgive you and they don't forgive you, that can't stop you from then forgiving yourself.
Exactly.
You don't need that person to give you forgiveness in
Right.
order to forgive yourself.
That's true.
And that's why we start with forgiving ourselves.
Right.
Because then you're just going to be like determining your forgiveness on someone else. And you
Exactly.
cannot
Mm-mm.
this just ties back into the bliss theory around, which we'll get into one of these days, about not letting the external determine your own internal happiness.
Exactly.
Period.
That's it.
So that's why we start with maybe the most challenging of things, forgiving yourself, you know? It's not easy, but it is so incredibly worth it. And if you want to be free and have that like innate peace and honestly to see the world in a more beautiful
Mm-hmm.
way, then that forgiveness needs to start with you.
Right.
I mean, just imagine a world filled with grace
Mm.
and forgiveness. Like honestly, just like take a second to like think about that.
Yeah, just to relish it,
Like
right?
it's just like there would be no war.
Right. There would probably be like fairy princesses running around or something.
Fairy princesses. I
Rainbows
want to be a fairy
every
princess.
day.
Yeah,
You
it would
know, I
just
mean,
be
just
a beautiful
pure
place to
happiness.
raise your
Oh,
children. It
definitely.
would be a happy world. And humans are imperfect, and it's okay to not be ready to forgive. But it's, put it on your list. Get there.
Yes,
And
definitely.
it's gonna literally change everything. It's kind of, we were talking about this earlier, but it's kind of like an ecosystem, you know?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Be right.
Like when you shift
When you shift.
and you start to forgive yourself and others,
Mm-hmm.
everything around you shifts. Because
Everything
everyone
does.
in your life, the male, man, or woman, your doctor, your child's teacher, your
Right.
best friend,
Your
your spouse,
siblings.
your siblings, your mother, your father, your cousins. Like, we have a relationship with every single person we interact with, obviously on different levels.
Right.
But if you shift, it will shift the way that people treat you because you're shifting.
Exactly.
You've shifted.
You've changed.
It will cause a different reaction because
Exactly.
people then talk to you differently, because then people react differently to this change in you because it's a new pattern.
Exactly.
And it literally shifts your ecosystem. And sometimes that might mean people fall away.
Exactly.
And that has to be okay. You have to forgive them for that.
Right. And that's okay.
And that's okay.
And I love how I struggled so many times, like, how does it work? Like, I see it working. I see the shift. I shifted. But how does that work? But when compare it to an ecosystem,
Mm-hmm.
you change one thing in that ecosystem
Mm-hmm.
and it changes everything else.
Yeah.
So I love that analogy that you made. It just really helps me understand how that happens.
How forgiveness
Yeah.
actually causes
Right,
change.
right.
And really, that's truly any change in yourself, right? That's like meaningful and profound. But forgiveness in particular
Mm-hmm.
is a really wonderful one.
Yeah.
And I think when you talk about forgiveness, you also have to talk about boundaries.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's not giving a free pass.
It's not giving a free pass. You can still forgive someone and not have them in your life anymore.
Right.
And sometimes that is the healthiest, best choice.
Exactly.
For whatever situation.
Right.
If you are then if you're forgiving, but you're not putting your boundaries in place, that can get you into a bad situation.
Right.
So I want to make sure that we're like giving that message out that boundaries are so important, and for our safety, for our mental peace, for other reasons.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that you can't forgive. You can hold forgiveness and healthy boundaries in the same moment.
Exactly. And that doesn't condone, that way you know that you're not condoning that bad behavior, right? You're saying that I'm worth me being free, and I'm also worth not putting myself in that situation.
Right.
And it sets both people free. Right?
Right.
And like you said before, forgiveness is something that we do in our mind.
Thank you for bringing that up, because it's actually super important what you're saying. You don't have to call someone
Right.
and say, I forgive you.
Right.
You can forgive them without talking to them.
Exactly.
If you're, were left in an abusive, toxic relationship where that person was hurting you, you're not going to then like go call them up and be like, hey, I forgive you.
Right.
But you can still forgive them while not talking to them ever again.
Exactly.
Just like you don't have to ask for forgiveness to be forgiven, you don't have to tell someone you forgive them to forgive them.
Yes. And we talked about like, I'm sorry, like, oh, I'm sorry. Even taking it a step further to make it feel like it's really authentically coming from your heart is to ask for forgiveness. Will you forgive me? Will you forgive me for... And it really puts a different level of spin on it, right? It really makes that person feel like they mean something to you.
Yeah.
If you're asking them to forgive you.
That's honestly so powerful. And it's not something that I've used a lot in my life. I'm sorry is something so easy and flippant. And even though if you really truly mean I'm sorry, the asking, will you forgive me, it puts a whole different meaning behind what you're conveying to that person.
Right.
And it's important to, if you feel that you need to ask for forgiveness, ask for it.
Right. Ask for it.
And I mean, what's your experience been since you've started using that? Like, how have you seen Like, what's the change in people or the different reaction, or like, what has that experience been like for you?
Well, I think that when I've used that, it makes that other person feel like it elevates them as a person, right?
Mm,
And it's your way of saying like, I care enough about you that I'm going to ask you to give me forgiveness, right? And it kind of feels like you're putting yourself in a state of self-respect, right?
mm.
And that you respect that other person. So when they say yes, or usually they say yes, they'll forgive you,
They're like, whoa, no one's
but
ever asked me that
then you know that
before.
you really mean that, right?
Yeah.
It's something that you really mean. It comes authentic and genuine, and I think that it really honors the situation, that you really truly are sorry for whatever A, B, C, and D you
Mm-hmm.
did,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it goes a long way,
Right.
try it
It's
out.
not like, will you accept my apology?
Right.
Like, forgiveness just means like it's so much bigger and deeper than than like, will you accept mine, than accepting an apology.
Right,
Like,
right.
it's like, can we wipe this clean?
Mhm.
And
And can we grow from this?
right. And
It's
I
something
want
that
to use that more in my life. When I really mean it, when I really do a wrong, because everyone does a wrong, like I want to start using that.
Mhm.
And again, there doesn't mean you have to say yes in order for you to forgive yourself,
Exactly.
but it does show that you are coming and you're asking, will you give me that grace?
Right. It's more thoughtful.
It's more thoughtful and
Yes, yes.
powerful.
Right, right.
And it's also like a level of, a lot of times people struggle with saying I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Like a lot. Have you ever met anyone in your life that struggled with saying I'm
Oh,
sorry?
like me.
Do
Like
you struggle with
there
that?
was a time in my past where it was hard for me to apologize because I felt like
Mm.
I was giving permission,
Mhm.
because it made me feel like I was wrong. And,
Mm.
if I'm perfect, then I can't be wrong.
Mm.
And I can't let you be right. So
Mm.
putting that ego away.
Really, Mom?
Yes, there were times where I was like, I'm not going to apologize. Like, let's just sweep it under the carpet. And then what?
In
Here
what,
I'm
if I
having
may ask, in what scenario? Was this clear? It wasn't was
I
it like
can't
in a
think of it.
partnership? Like, was it in a romantic relationship? Was it in
Um
like a familial relationship?
Probably like my siblings, if I think of
Okay.
anything, something with my
Okay.
siblings.
Okay.
So that
Yeah.
kind of makes it a little bit different. No, not really. No, but I'm sure that there were times where I was wrong.
Mm,
And, I try to get past that part where it's like, it's not about being right or wrong.
yeah.
It's about, here was a problem.
Mhm.
This is the way I chose to handle it,
Mhm.
and it wasn't a good way to handle it,
Mhm.
and it's okay to be sorry.
Mhm.
And it doesn't make you less than.
Mhm.
It actually makes you better if you are able to create a space for yourself to say that you're sorry
Right.
or to apologize.
Right.
And boy, does it feel good,
Yeah.
you know?
And it can be like a very humbling thing to ask for
Mhm.
forgiveness. And sometimes you might have to maybe you need to say I'm sorry first. Maybe you can start practicing that and then get to that level like you did. You didn't go straight into asking for
Right, right.
forgiveness.
No.
It was a process and a journey. And I know that people always ask me, like, how did you forgive Zach? And like, you know, why, some people tried to even shame me for that, of course.
Mm.
It is, there's always going to be people that don't agree with your approach. But where people, there are a very common theme is like, I'm too petty. Like, I'm happy for Bliss, but I'm way too petty to ever forgive. People would say, like, I am so happy for Bliss and Zach, but I could never. Like, I'm too petty. I could never. And like that pettiness, that's like holding on to anger, to vengeance. It's literally like, this might be the happiest, best thing for me, but because I'm unwilling to forgive this situation, then I'm literally like keeping in my own way, my own worst enemy.
Right, right, right.
And that's honestly like how I see it. Like, I got this beautiful gift from Zack in the pods, and I feel like I was able to handle our breakup so well and be at so much peace and give so much grace because of this gift that he gave me.
Oh,
And then,
wow.
I used that gift to forgive him.
Yes.
And there's so much that happens that no one sees. But getting back together and ultimately getting married to the love of my life and having my perfect, beautiful, not perfect, but almost
Perfect
perfect,
to
perfect
us,
to me,
perfect
beautiful,
to you.
gorgeous baby daughter
Right.
and this amazing life that I have. And if
Yes.
I was gonna like sit there and be like, I'm gonna be petty, like I would literally have kept myself from all of this joy.
All of this joy, like
Like,
crazy, right?
yeah.
Because you could be sitting somewhere by yourself, I'm just saying,
No,
and just
probably.
letting it eat and fester.
Right.
And here that other person's like, la di da. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just saying in general.
Yeah. And the pettiness is like the antonym of forgiveness. That's the opposite of forgiveness
Oh,
is
wow.
pettiness and vengeance and
Anger, right?
um I don't know if anger is a direct antonym. I don't
Mm.
know if I think that.
Okay.
But there is anger associated with
With,
vengeance and pettiness and
right.
holding on to
Holding
things.
on to things,
Absolutely.
right.
And when you go down that journey of, forgiveness and you start with yourself and then you think about who you need to forgive, there's things that can haunt you throughout your life.
Right.
And it's not something that you think about every day or every month or every week, but maybe a couple times a year, maybe once a year. It'll kind of bubble up. You know, how someone did you wrong or someone hurt you or there was a trauma associated with something. And it will haunt you for the rest of your life unless you take time to be purposeful to let it go,
Right.
because that is
That's
all. It might not be
essential.
something you think about every day, but it's hanging on to you. It's there within you.
It's like a black cloud hovering over your head.
Yeah. Or beneath the surface, right? It may not be
Yes.
so obvious as a black cloud.
Right.
It may be a crack in the foundation that you
Mm.
can't see, but you're still not able to quite have that steady footing.
Right.
Forgiveness, I mean, is associated with letting go of some pretty intense things. I mean, we're talking about really intense things that happen to people.
Right.
And I don't want to sit here and say that it's easy and say that you should be happy that those things happen to you necessarily, right?
No.
But in order to set yourself free from those things, those terrible things, forgiveness is key.
Right. And give yourself that time, right? Give
Mhm.
yourself that grace.
Mhm.
Not only just like giving grace to others, but give that to yourself.
Mhm.
And in with time, it'll get easier.
Yeah.
With
Well.
time, it'll just be so easy.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I was talking about we talked about the four agreements on our first episode.
Mhm.
And I asked someone, a wise person, the other day, I said, I wonder why forgiveness wasn't one of the four agreements. And then he said, well, if you practice the four agreements, forgiveness is intertwined in all of that.
Yeah, and the Four Agreements, just to give a little background, is a book written by Don Miguel.
Right?
And it's about, if you follow these four agreements, then life will be the dream that you dream it to be.
Exactly.
And you will be
Right.
free. And just to give a little bit of background so people know, the four agreements are: don't take anything personally, be impeccable with your word, don't assume, and always do your best.
Always do your
And I love
best.
that that person said, yeah, because if you're doing all of those things, like, forgiveness is a part of it.
Right. Just like, for example, like not taking anything personally.
Mm-hmm.
If like we went to the restaurant the other day and the lady wasn't in a good mood,
Mm-hmm.
and we knew it wasn't about us
Right.
right away. We
Yeah.
were like, this is not about us.
Mm-hmm.
And it could have gone the other way. It could have made us angry or mean or revengeful towards her for being in a bad mood or whatever, in a funk, so to speak. And we didn't take that personally.
No.
And by the time before we left, she was so jovial,
She
and
was jovial.
she felt our good energy,
Probably because
right?
her shift was ending soon. Just kidding. Totally.
That too,
I think
baby.
that's so
Yeah.
important to talk about, and it's a beautiful thing. What a really astute comment about
Right.
that person,
Right. Right.
aka your partner. We can say
I know
it.
my partner. Yes, my
Yeah,
partner was
yeah,
really, I was so happy that he
yeah,
shared that. And I was
yeah.
like, wow. And then I started to connect it to
Mhm.
doing my best. Well, if I
Mhm.
do my best,
Mhm.
then I may ask for forgiveness,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
I'll
Mhm.
be more brave to apologize,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so, and it's okay.
Mhm.
Like if you think about the scheme of in the scheme of the universe, most of the stuff that we hold on to doesn't really matter,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So, did
Yep.
you get most when you forgave Zach?
Mhm.
Did you mostly get good things? Or did you, because that kind of is like a telltale sign to how society
What do you
is.
mean?
Like, did you mostly have people support you?
Uh-huh.
Was it like 50-50?
Well, it's
Like,
difficult to know. It's difficult to know because I don't have a general questionnaire out to everyone, but just like from the general response, like I feel like we got a lot of support.
okay.
I think that people that you don't even see the quarter tenth of it, but what you do see, I think people can really tell that me and Zach were like very much meant to be.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
so I think that maybe helped people come around, but it wasn't my concern about that. Like I didn't really
Right,
care.
right.
One of the number one questions that I get to this day even is like, how did you forgive Zach? Like how did you do
Oh.
it?
And what do
And
you say?
honestly, I don't know that I've ever actually responded
Oh,
to
okay.
one of those questions, to be
Right, right.
honest. Maybe like in media interviews I've responded, but if I were to respond to that question, I would say um that I had to forgive myself, that he gave me this gift that I didn't know was coming. And a lot of the reason I forgave him was because of who he is, was because of him, you
Right,
know?
yeah.
And
And
there's
he
just this
was
kind
worth
of
it.
this powerful shift. Like you're in the pause for such a short time, but so much happens. And I started that self-forgiveness journey in the pause.
I love
And
that
I took
so
that home
much.
with me.
I love
And
that.
I think also, importantly, I knew in my heart that everything that's meant to be for me will be for me. And
Mm,
I'm not going to have this thing come into my life or back into my life. And I know that this is my person. Like, I know that. And I'm not going, that would be the most ridiculous, stupid thing for me to just be like, oh, well, no, I'm gonna be petty and I'm gonna hold on to my pettiness. And, maybe that's all I would have at the end of my life instead of the love of my life and my daughter and this beautiful thing. I would just have that pettiness still holding
right,
on to that.
right.
And that's what would be there in my life to keep me
Full of
company.
pain. Full
Like
of
that's just
pain.
not what
No.
and I think it wasn't like it looks so quick in on the show, but there was so many conversations. And Zach also came to me with a humble heart. He was not trying to justify anything. He owned it.
Yes,
He
he
was like,
did.
I messed up.
Yes.
And he honestly, like, he earned my forgiveness.
Yes, he did. And we saw that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your brother and I, we watched and we were on the
Mm.
phone and we were like, he's not denying, he's not making
Mm-hmm.
any excuses
Mm-mm.
for it. He owned it.
He knew
And
and
that is huge.
yeah. And one thing Zach always tells me is like he knew in his heart that it was me.
Mm.
And he had to go on his own
He had
journey
to go on his
to
own
like
journey.
be ready for me.
Right.
And I think that I love our story exactly as it
Me
happened. It was
too.
just
So
that's
do
how it
I.
was meant to happen.
Exactly.
And I think we talk about like, oh, like if we had gotten engaged in the pods, like I don't maybe Zach needed to go through that in order to be ready to say yes at the altar to me.
Yes, definitely. I love that. And you know, we were talking Zach and I were talking the other day, and I've had other moms come to me and say, "You were so forgiving to him. You were too nice to him." And
To
it's like,
Zach.
yeah. And I'm like, why would I treat
Mm-hmm.
someone else's child
Mm.
the way I would not want anyone to treat my child.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew you. We know each other. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're so close.
Yeah.
We are so connected
Mm-hmm.
that if you said whatever you said, I was on board.
Yeah. Well,
And that's just how I am to
yeah.
support you, you
Thank you,
know?
mommy.
So that was a big thing for me.
Yeah.
And I hear you tell Galileo that.
What?
I hear you say, whatever she wants, whatever she decides, we are there for her.
Yeah.
And I see that now because I feel like that's how I am with you.
Yeah.
Whatever you've decided, I always tell you, whatever you guys wanted to do, just be your best.
Mm-hmm.
Just do the best, right?
Mm-hmm.
And why not, right?
Yeah.
So having her see that her mom was so forgiving of her dad is
Mm-hmm.
huge.
Yeah.
And that is such a great example for her growing up.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful thing for her
Yeah.
to grow up just knowing grace.
Well, I think, Zach and I always talk about that. Like, if there's one thing that we want the world to know from our story on Love is Blind is that we believe in grace and there is space for forgiveness and grace. And when you have those things and you use those things and you give those things and you receive those things, it's just it's beauty. It's beauty.
Truly.
And it can be painful to go through the process of forgiveness. I'm not saying it's always going to be this thing where you feel instant relief once you start the process of forgiveness.
Right.
Once you reach forgiveness truly, then it is amazing. But it can be painful because then you have to maybe relive some things or write that letter like how I talked about, like there's things simmering underneath, like your father who years of your whole life and you're just kind of taking the time, you're kind of deciding now and you're like being purposeful about letting that go and the forgiveness there.
Well, I didn't even think that. Thank you, because I didn't even. It wasn't like he wasn't a person
like
that
it wasn't
I
obvious,
thought about.
Right? See, that's my whole point was.
Right.
You might not think about it.
I didn't think about him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think. I mean, and if I hadn't taken this abundance challenge, then I wouldn't even probably. I'd still be running through the daisies, thinking everything was fine, and feeling like my kite was flying high enough. But now it's okay to clean house and inwardly.
Yeah.
And I was working with a lady not too long ago, and she was talking about forgiveness. And that was just the one thing that she didn't feel like she could give to her friend that had betrayed her for A, B, C, and D. And it's like, start with yourself. And she looked at me like, what? It's like, yeah, start with yourself. And when you do that, so I'd like to see. I'm going to be talking to her in a couple of weeks, so I'd like to see how her journey's going.
That's so cool. I think that's so beautiful, and I think it can be shocking to hear that as a response, but that's where you gotta start. And wow, life is just so beautiful with forgiveness. And yes. I think for being honest with ourselves, like we've all been on that other side where we've hurt someone,
right,
and wanted, that forgiveness. We've all been on the side where we have been the one that's been hurt.
Exactly.
And no one is in a place to say and condemn and say, you don't deserve forgiveness. And it's when we kind of set that standard in our life and in the relationships that we have, it can just create magic.
Definitely, without a doubt.
And it's just a freer, more beautiful way to live.
And when you do that, like that's sort of connected to your self-love. When you love yourself, you do forgive yourself.
Absolutely. They're completely intertwined. Part of getting to love yourself, because I believe we're born with self-love, but we along the way, society, experiences, the ways you're raised, whatever it is, changes.
Exactly.
That. And in order to achieve true self-love, forgiveness is one of the many steps. Forgiveness of self and forgiveness of people that have wronged you.
Exactly.
Because that pettiness or that anger, you're not living in a sense of self-love.
Right. Right. And all this talk about forgiveness. I know something's going always happens in my life. Like this week, something's going to happen, and I'm going to be like, oh, yeah, forgiveness.
Yeah.
It's going to present itself. It's like, oh, yeah, here I am.
Mm-hmm.
We try to really say what we mean and mean what we say
Yeah.
and apply it to our
And it's a
lives.
rewriting of thought patterns.
Oh,
And
I
you
love
have to kind
that.
of catch yourself, getting, I'm going to get angry, or I'm going to be vengeful or petty. And then you're like, okay, wait, like, I'm going to step it back. Especially like if you're married. They talk about like in marriage, like you have to forgive so much all the time.
All the time.
And it's,
And
yeah,
it's
it's not
building,
easy all the
it's not
time.
always, or even like drivers, like when you're driving, when I hear someone yell like he cut me off or whatever, it's like
Mm-hmm.
forgive it and let it go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like road rage, you don't want to be in like a state of road rage,
Right.
and I'm really sensitive to that now. So if I'm in a car with someone that's driving and gets all upset, it's like, and whatever it wasn't about you. As long
Yeah.
as you're okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just let it go. Let them
Mm-hmm.
go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Free up all of that mental space with all that pettiness and all that anger hanging out and all that, well, they wronged me, so they deserve to
right.
burn and
Exactly.
all of that. And like give that mind space to loving yourself, loving others, meditating, thinking about how you can make your life better, spending time making your life better. It's beautiful.
And don't be a prisoner of your past, right?
Yeah, the past is you really and when you talk about forgiveness, you have to talk about the past too. Like that's a big part of it is letting go of the past. And letting go in order to let go of the past, forgive.
And when
No
you
one's saying forget.
right,
Keep those boundaries. I'm going
right,
to
keep
keep
those
saying those boundaries
boundaries
need to be in place.
for your health,
But
but
you
it
can,
frees up space for the now,
yeah, I love that.
and it allows you to be more present.
Forgiveness frees up space for the now and allows you to be present.
Yes.
Can you read that affirmation to me that we talked about earlier around forgiveness?
Amazing Louise Hay, which we love and adore. The door to my heart opens inward. I move through forgiveness to love.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll just read one more because I love these. Today I listen to my feelings and I'm gentle with myself. I know that all of my feelings are my friends.
Love it.
Right?
Yeah.
All righty.
So, in conclusion, the Bliss theory of forgiveness: forgive yourself, ask for forgiveness instead of saying I'm sorry,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
forgive others, and watch your life change around you.
Love it. Thanks.